Welcome. We're on day 7. No, not day 7. Yeah, day 7, week 7 of our Course in Miracles study group. We're on page 21 in chapter 2 under the bold text, The Altar of God. I'll leave the link down below for the online copy that you can read. It's free. Yeah. So we're going to get started. We're going to start reading the first paragraph and we'll just go back and forth and then talk about our interpretations.
Sounds good.
Cool. Did you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I can go.
Sure.
Okay. The atonement can only be accepted within you by releasing the inner light. Since the separation, defenses have been used almost entirely to defend against the atonement and thus maintain the separation. This is generally seen as a need to protect the body. The many body fantasies in which the minds engage arise from the distorted belief that the body can be used as a means for attaining atonement. Perceiving the body as a temple is only the first step in correcting this distortion because it alters only part of it. It does recognize that atonement in physical terms is impossible. The next step, however, is to realize that a temple is not a structure at all. Its true holiness lies at the inner altar around which the structure is built. The emphasis on beautiful structures is a sign of the fear of atonement and an unwillingness to reach the altar itself. The real beauty of the temple cannot be seen with the physical eye. Spiritual sight, on the other hand, cannot see the structure at all because it is perfect vision. It can, however, see the altar with perfect clarity. I am not sure I understand this.
Separation.
Many body fantasies in which minds engage arise from the distorted belief that the body can be used as a means for attaining atonement.
Atonement. This is the next step is to realize the temple is not a structure at all. I interpret this to mean almost like using the body as a means to an end, to start by treating the body as a temple and, to do the healthy things and to exercise and to, take care of yourself with like beauty rituals and things like this, but that eventually you'll begin to realize that what you're nurturing has never actually been a physical body. It's always been like a seed, an unseen force within you that has always been there and will always be there. And it's almost like the body is a symbol for this energetic presence. And so while you need to, you can use the symbol to nurture the presence, but eventually you'll realize that it's not necessary anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because if you're working towards nurturing the body every single day, doing whatever rituals needed, it then it just becomes a part of who you are. And yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. That's kind of how I interpret it. Almost, and then it also reminds me of the idea of building a kingdom inside of your heart. And so rather than needing the external world to be a kingdom, you start nurturing the kingdom within, which is just holding yourself in a state of grace and compassion and forgiveness. And so then your external will reflect that back to you, but it's not necessary because you've already created it within. But what you've created isn't necessarily like physical or tangible. It's more of like a energy state that you can exist inside of.
That makes a lot more sense, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. For perfect effectiveness, the atonement belongs at the center of the inner altar, where it undoes the separation and restores the wholeness of the mind. Before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear because fear did not exist. Both the separation and the fear are miscreations that must be undone for the restoration of the temple and for the opening of the altar to receive the atonement. This heals the separation by placing within you the one effective defense against all separation thoughts and making you perfectly invulnerable. Okay. So it's almost like the atonement is like the foundation of this presence, of the presence of your inner kingdom or temple. The atonement is the foundation of it with which you build upon almost. And before the separation, the mind was invulnerable to fear because fear did not exist. Both the separation and the fear are miscreations that must be undone for the restoration of the temple. So it's almost like when the separation happened and we started um, seeing life in a through the illusion, it's almost like our temple was like hidden away by like the darkness or the veils on our sight. And by nurturing it, the illusions begin to fall away. I don't know. That's all I'm getting out of this. What do you have anything different?
That one is also a little bit over my head at this point.
Yeah, these paragraphs today are starting off strong.
Yeah, I'll just go to the
Uh,
next one.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
Well, they'll start to, I think the more we read, the more our minds will start to understand.
Yeah, it's like a momentum thing. Like we
Uh,
just gotta get rolling. Okay. The acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. This may appear to contradict free will because of the inevitability of the final decision, but this is not so. You can temporize and you are capable of enormous procrastination, but you cannot depart entirely from your creator who sets the limits on your ability to miscreate. An imprisoned will engenders a situation which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. Tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. As this recognition becomes more firmly established, it becomes a turning point. This ultimately reawakens spiritual vision, simultaneously weakening the investment in physical sight. The alternating investment in the two levels of perception is usually experienced as conflict, which can become very acute, but the outcome is as certain as God. Um, I think to put it lightly, it's like just kind of there comes a point where you like get tired of your own shit. Like it's like, okay, this is just not working anymore. Um, and the inner conflict is something that I have been like really pondering for a while, I guess. And it's like without the conflict, there's not really change, but like a lot of people are so like conflict avoidant. So I don't know. It's a confusing one for me. Like
Yeah.
the tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limit. Um, an imprisoned will engenders a situation in which, in the extreme, becomes altogether intolerable. So it's like you do have to reach that point where it's like you can't avoid the conflict any longer. Like it has to be faced head on and you have to deal with it. But this is saying the acceptance of the atonement by everyone is only a matter of time. So it's like, even the longer you stay in that conflict avoidance, it's like eventually you get there, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like it's almost pointing to like everyone has a different level of rock bottom. And it's once you hit your own personal rock bottom that you're just kind of like finally ready to accept that there might be something better, that maybe you're being stubborn, maybe your way isn't always the right way. And so that realization opens you up to spiritual sight that you didn't have when you were too stubborn to let yourself expand. And it reminds me a little bit of the Aura, I don't know how to say that, the Ouroboros snake
Yeah.
that eats its own tail. It's almost like the point where you hit rock bottom is also the point where you reach ultimate enlightenment in a sense, because it's just that one choice to see that there has to be another way, that you then start going up rather than deeper down. And so like
Yeah.
because you made that flip, it's like your enlightenment was already attained because time doesn't exist. So in that moment, you reached enlightenment, and now you're simply just walking yourself through physicality and time to get yourself there.
Yeah. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it. And I also, because I always forget when we're recording, but I want to encourage everybody watching the replay that if you have any comments or your own perceptions, you can always write them down in the comments and I would totally read them. I would love to hear what y'all have to say. Because I know there's a few people that watch it every week, and yeah, I'd just be interested in what you're thinking while we're recording this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Um, the next paragraph. Spiritual vision literally cannot see error and merely looks for atonement. All solutions the physical eye seeks dissolve. Spiritual vision looks within and recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. Perfectly aware of the right defense, it passes over all others, looking past error to truth. Because of the strength of its vision, it brings the mind into service. This reestablishes the power of the mind and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay, realizing that it only adds unnecessary pain. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it would once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. Okay, let me sit with this for a second. Perfectly aware of. It's almost as if it's almost as if, and I've been talking about this a lot this week, but this reminds me like the spiritual vision cannot see error, which reminds me of being the divine witness. So it's almost like when you're viewing life and walking through life through the eyes of the divine witness, you can't see wrong in anywhere because you've forgiven it all, because you know it's an illusion. And so the solutions dissolve because the solution is not an external thing that needs to happen, but rather a shift in internal perception. And so spiritual vision looks within and recognizes immediately that the altar has been defiled and needs to be repaired and protected. This means when you see something externally that you think is going wrong or whatever, you're casting a judgment, you must look within and notice that the only reason you can even perceive something external as going wrong or some or like that, it's because your altar has been defiled. So rather than trying to fix it out there, you go within and forgive and clean up your inner altar, and then you perceive the world through new eyes. This reestablishes the power, which then reestablishes the power of the mind and makes it increasingly unable to tolerate delay because the power is in your perception. And so there really is no delay. You can choose to change your perception instantly through forgiveness. As a result, the mind becomes increasingly sensitive to what it once have regarded as very minor intrusions of discomfort. So to me, that means that you become extra like psychically sensitive to all distortions and illusions in your energetic field, almost like you're standing so firmly in the presence and truth of who you are, which is the divine witness, that all distortion and illusion must be revealed to you because you are the light. And so you cast shadows on anything that is not the light. So you just get more sensitive to contrast.
I love that how you just said that you cast shadows on everything. Like I love that. That's so beautiful.
It's crazy. I've been thinking about that so much this week. This whole week, I've just been practicing as best as I can, which it's very hard. I've just been practicing being the divine witness. And I just noticed that even though I'm forgiving of the shadows, it doesn't mean like it doesn't make other people uncomfortable almost. Like when you can see from that place of being the witness in that way, it almost makes other people uncomfortable because while you might not be judging them, you're coming from a place of forgiveness of everything. You don't even see it as a problem. It brings it up inside of them. And so, it irks people a little bit.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm gonna have to ponder that one.
Yeah.
Okay. The children of God are entitled to the perfect comfort that comes from perfect trust. Until they achieve this, they waste themselves and their true creative powers on useless attempts to make themselves more comfortable by inappropriate means. But the real means are already provided and do not involve any effort at all on their part. The atonement is the only gift that is worthy of being offered at the altar of God because of the value of the altar itself. It was created perfect and it's entirely worthy of receiving perfection. God and his creations are completely dependent on each other. He depends on them because he created them perfect. He gave them his peace so he could not be shaken and could not be deceived. Whenever you are afraid, you are deceived, and your mind cannot serve the Holy Spirit. This starves you by denying you your daily bread. God is lonely without his sons, and they are lonely without him. They must learn to look upon the world as a means of healing the separation. The atonement is the guarantee that they will ultimately succeed. I just kind of see this as like we can get caught in things like working towards trying to better things, better ourselves, better our situations, which are, like there are times when that is necessary, but it's like coming back to like, why is it that I'm doing this? But this is just saying it's like the atonement is the only gift that is worthy of being offered. So it's like, it doesn't matter, how many cleanses or detoxes you do, or, how much fasting you do, or any of that. It's like the only thing that God is asking of us is the atonement. It's just to be in that purity. And just recognizing that there is the perfection. It's like any of the other things that we're doing, it's because we love them and we enjoy them, and those are part of creation, but it's not necessary because everything is already perfect.
Hmm. I love that. This
That's
paragraph brings me just a deep sense of peace, almost like, I can relax.
yeah. Yeah, it's like a nice exhale.
Hmm. I love it. I think yeah, I thought the way you explained that was perfect.
Thank you.
Healing as release from fear. Healing as release from fear. Our emphasis is now on healing. The miracle is the means, the atonement is the principle, and healing is the result. To speak of a miracle of healing is to combine two orders of reality inappropriately. Healing is not a miracle. The atonement, or the final miracle, is a remedy, and any type of healing is a result. The kind of error to which atonement is applied is irrelevant. All healing is essentially the release from fear. To undertake this, you cannot be fearful of yourself. You do not understand healing because of your own fear. This paragraph really fascinates me, even just saying healing is not a miracle, because then that just leads me to be like, well, of course, because healing implies that there's something wrong with us, which there isn't anything wrong with us. Our sight has just been veiled, and the atonement isn't looking to fix us because we're wrong. The atonement is asking for us to notice that that none of our judgments ever existed in the first place. So it's just bringing us back to our true state. And so to say healing is not a miracle, to just kind of, I don't know how to word it. Hmm. Basically, that there is nothing really to heal. We we are on a healing path because we are in physicality, but this is just an experience of a lucid dream,
Yeah.
and we are the observer that doesn't actually need to be healed. We're experiencing the human walking through the healing journey, but we are not the human that's doing the healing. We are simply just the omnipresent observer or awareness that is experiencing what it is like to be a human who is on a healing journey.
Yeah. And taking it back to like the I am presence, it's like I am the healing. I am healing. You are healing. We are healing. So it's not that we need to be healed, it's that we are that. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a great paragraph.
A major step in the atonement plan is to undo error at all levels. Sickness or not right mindedness is the result of level confusion because it always entails the belief that what is amiss on one level can adversely affect another. We have referred to miracles as the means of correcting level confusion, for all mistakes must be corrected at the level on which they occur. Only the mind is capable of error. The body can act wrongly only when it is responding to misthought. The body cannot create, and the belief that it can, a fundamental error, produces all physical symptoms. Physical illness represents a belief in magic. The whole distortion that made magic rests on the belief that there is a creative ability in matter which the mind cannot control. This error can take two forms. It can be believed that the mind can miscreate in the body or that the body can miscreate in the mind. When it is understood that the mind, the only level of creation, cannot create beyond itself, neither type of confusion need occur. Um, this is something that I am still like working out in my mind, just the physical illness part. Um, because there is that wonder, it's like, am I creating this? Or is this just what is it, like a result of like maybe my environment? I don't know. I'm still a little confused about that because um I kind of feel like in terms of um like chronic illness and stuff, I I believe that a lot of us end up in environments that kind of intentionally make us sick because that's really the only way that we are going to like get the message. So, and that kind of goes back to like the whole perfection of everything is like you can go online and find all this stuff about, like, oh, there's toxins in our water, there's toxins in our food, the lighting is bad. It's like all of this stuff, but it's like I kind of feel like all of that had to happen in order for us to be able to see, if everything was perfect, if everything was, it is perfect in its own way, but if we didn't have these irritants, like societal irritants, environmental irritants, all of these things, would we really be able to like see the feedback as clearly? So I kind of see it as that, as like, living in an environment that isn't necessarily the best for you. Like maybe that's the one thing that you needed in order to see the divine perfection in it all.
Yeah.
Well, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes sense. I feel like, which this is just my own perspective, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially in the spiritual community, when we're like, oh, I caused my sickness, like I'm sick and it's my fault. And it almost adds like this heavy weight on
Yeah.
us. Like it makes us feel like there's something wrong with us and there's something
Yeah.
that we need to do to fix it because we're inherently bad. We made ourselves sick and now I have to fix myself. Whereas sometimes I think because if you think of Earth as one organism, like kind of what you were talking about, it's one environment, it's one organism. And when the organism as a whole is sick, it's bound to manifest out physically, whether it's in individual human lives or in poisoned water or the toxic air. And, if you really look into it, you could find everything is. I was reading an article about how toilet paper is toxic for you the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, we can't freaking use anything.
Yeah.
And I think that the solution, rather than trying to like kind of what the paragraph prior was saying, rather than trying to go external and create and fix in the outside world, it's about coming back to that like divine witness of love and forgiveness and almost viewing it from the lens of like, wow, what a freaking weird experience that we are all like these divine eternal beings, and yet we can manifest sicknesses and disease and poison in our water. And then just sinking deeper into that state of forgiveness for all of it, rather than trying to fix it outside, shifting the perspective internally and forgiving ourselves for even perceiving it that way in the first place. And I think that's kind of what alchemizes it and heals the planet because you're
Yeah.
feeling I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Because there is a divine perfection in it all. It's like I don't really like to sit in the belief that like there are these dark forces that are just trying to kill us all, or like it's so looking outside of ourselves as like the one like outside of me is what's causing my demise. But what's actually causing my demise is me not like seeing the perfection and the beauty in it all and seeing that in myself. So it's like the more of us who take that divine witness standpoint and just kind of love the whole thing, it's like those situations wouldn't even like they wouldn't be existing any further. So I don't know. I see it as like a whole, like it's like all of these irritants have to happen in order for us to really like wake up to what is really going on. It's, it's like the more irritants that we have coming at us from all directions, it's like when you learn archetypes and you can see like the archetypal nature of it all, it's like it just makes a lot more sense. But yeah, I think, and it's like the fear of those things too, I think is what gets a lot of people. And like I've been this way. I have had the whole like, oh, I'm not going to eat all these things. There's toxins in that. I can't eat that. I can't eat that. And it's like, it's not being crazy. Like, make good choices, but I don't know. The, it's focusing too much on the external and not just like witnessing what it is.
Yeah, that was so beautifully said. I agree with you. I feel like I feel like we all have to get to a point where we're just exhausted of fighting the external. We're exhausted of like projecting all of it onto and something outside of ourselves because that really is exhausting. And I
Yeah.
was thinking about that the other day, um, to myself. I was just like, oh my God, like aren't we all exhausted yet of like screaming at people and throwing hate on others and trying to find toxic things and that and trying to find toxic things in this and like aren't we tired yet? Like can we just all collectively agree to rest and take a step back and bring all of that anger and fear inwards and just face ourselves so that we can hurry up and
Yeah.
move through this. But of course that was like my ego perspective of it because the witness would just witness it and forgive it, but the ego in me is just like, oh my God, let's move through this already.
Yeah, I feel that too. It's like, and like like, aren't we just bored of like self-hatred? Aren't we bored? It's so boring. I don't want to live that life anymore. I've done that. I don't, it's not that fun to like be this sad girl who hates herself. Like I'm over it. I don't want to do that. It's boring.
I love that you used that word because I have been telling myself that. That's been my trick these past few weeks. When I catch myself in a pattern, I'm like, oh, this is so boring. Whenever I'm like catching myself in a pattern of seeking external validation or something like that, I'll just tell myself, like, this is so boring. I don't even want to do this anymore. I'm so bored of it.
Yeah.
Then it like instantly breaks me out of the cycle.
So funny.
Oh. Okay. Is it my turn to read?
I think so, but I don't remember which one I just read.
I think so too. I think you wrote this, the one about physical illness. Okay. I think I'm on only the mind can create.
Okay.
Um, Only the mind can create because spirit has already been created, and the body is a learning device of the mind. Learning devices are not lessons in themselves. Their purpose is merely to facilitate learning. Learning devices are not lessons in themselves. Their purpose is merely to facilitate learning. The worst a faulty use of a learning device can do is to fail to facilitate learning. It has no power in itself to introduce actual learning errors. The body, if properly understood, shares the invulnerability of the atonement to two-edged application. This is not because the body is a miracle, but because it is not inherently open to misinterpretation. The body is merely part of your experience in the physical world. Its abilities can be and frequently are over-evaluated. However, it is almost impossible to deny its existence in this world. Those who do so are engaging in a particularly unworthy form of denial. The term unworthy here implies only that it is not necessary to protect the mind by denying the unmindful. If one denies this unfortunate aspect of the mind's power, one is also denying the power itself. That was a mouthful. Learning devices. Hmm. The body is a miracle, but because it is not inherently open to misinterpretation. I think this just goes back to not over identifying with the body, but not being so like up in the air, ungrounded about it that you're like, oh, my body doesn't even matter. So I'm just going to ignore it and I'm not going to feed it or bathe it or do the human things. Um, but being able to merge the two, I think there's a quote at one point, I could be wrong if Jesus said but where he says like, know the truth, but respect the illusion. Like, know that you're not the body. Don't over identify with the body, but respect that for now you have a body and to use it to your advantage to learn from while you're here and while you can.
Do you know when this book was channeled? Like the year?
Hmm. I want to say it was like in the maybe like 80s or 90s.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Um, let's see. Well, that would just be when this one was published.
I could totally Google it, but I'm
Yeah,
too distracted.
1975.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to me because it seems like a lot of spiritual teachings, like prior to there's like a certain threshold, they do say like, the body is it like you're saying, like don't disregard the body, but the body is like just the vessel. But I have theories about like evolution and especially after 2020, like when we had like this whole planetary alignment in Capricorn, because Capricorn can have a lot to do with like the physical structures of the body. And yeah, this is just really interesting because I think that now as consciousness is expanding and we're coming into these truths, these spiritual truths that have been like channeled throughout, from I'd say probably like the 40s to like maybe like 2012, 2012 is like one of the big dates for that. But I really think that we're coming into more of a like a grounded human experience, and I think that the body is actually becoming like far more prevalent um in just like the picture of things, because like we are essentially like we're just like terminals that are, like what is filtering through our body is like what makes up the illusion, like the Maya, like the world stage. And I do think that, I don't know, I think that this we're coming more into like a more grounded, like body centered approach than what I feel like this is really conveying at this point. That's why I was wondering if it was kind of older, but
Mm, yeah, I love that. And that makes a lot of sense because while you could say that this is a book that she channeled and it was written by Jesus, it still had to go through the filter of her
yeah,
mind and her conditioning and what she, like what everybody has. So
totally.
I love that because I have been feeling that totally the same way for probably about a year now. It was about a year ago that I really started like to stop. Like I was like, I am sick and tired of trying to ascend. I'm tired of trying to get somewhere else. I'm tired of trying to go to 5D. Like it's exhausting. This is genuinely exhausting. And so I just kind of surrendered into my body and I surrendered to the experience more deeply than I ever had before. And I started to begin to understand more deeply like how your body merges with spirit. And when you merge that presence with your physical body, it almost like alters your physicality as a whole. And so your body goes from, which I'm not saying that's what I'm doing or what I've done or where I don't know. This is just what I've been contemplating this past year. So everybody can take it or leave it, but it's almost like when this merge starts to happen, it begins altering your DNA and you become like almost lighter in frequency, not just your spirit, but like your actual body isn't as dense. And that's how people are able to do things like walk on water or walk through walls or communicate with their minds. It's because they're altering the matter, they're altering the whole physical reality,
Yeah,
which can only happen when you descend down into it with the light of your awareness.
totally. Yeah, I have been like I grew up doing like dance and ballet, like that kind of stuff when I was little. And it was always like it just seemed like one of those things that was just like so like easy in a sense. But I think it was because there's something to like the mechanics of posture. And I'm not really the best at like expressing myself verbally, but there is that when you're in dance or movement, the way that your body is posturing is expression in itself. And it kind of goes into the idea of telepathy, like different ways of passing information. So it's like if the body like I don't have like the greatest vision, so sometimes I could be like very squinty. And then if I'm like squinting really hard, then it's like that stays that way. And then I notice I get like this tension headache and it makes it like dims down my experience because I'm stuck in this posture that's like I can't see, and then because the the posture matches the expression, then it's like, well, no, you really can't see, it's like, and then if you're like sitting in this like slumped position and you're not like, you're not receptive, if you're sitting up in a posture. So I think there's a lot more that's like coming into play in terms of posture and movement because um it's like, what are like the seven liberal arts, like I mean I don't know all of them, but like ballet and dance is like one of those that part of that, and it's because I believe that that is like an innate human expression. I don't believe it's like came from this region. It's like, yeah, mean, I don't know where it started, but it's like those aren't the people that own that. It's like that, like dance in and of itself is an innate human expression. And when you really focus on like the body and movement and expression of the body, I think that that's what really kind of like heals the reflection of what's going on, I guess. I don't know if that.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I've been in a state these past few weeks of being more expressive with my physical body, even just like by myself at home. I've been dancing more, and I noticed that when I am feeling tension or anxiety in my body, I've just been like naturally doing dance moves and like expressing and moving it out. And I've been, yeah, I just like that you started talking about that because I've been just randomly doing stuff like that, and it's been altering my reality just by
Yeah.
moving the energy.
Yeah, because it's like if the spirit is descending into form and the form is filled with tension, then like how deep can it actually get? If you think about like when you're watering a plant and it's been really dry, like you have to water it like very slowly or it's not going to like soak in. It'll just kind of spill over. So the body is a lot like that, where it's like if you're so dried out and you have so much tension, it's like the spirit can't really come into that. It doesn't actually penetrate. So once you can get rid of all of that tension, and that takes movement, that takes the whole, like spiral movements and all of that, it takes that to really like soften into allowing spirit into the body. And then that it's like the more you allow spirit into the body, the more the reflection and the reality is altered.
I love that. I'm going to be thinking about that for a very long time. That is very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Wow.
you can get to a point where it's like you almost feel like you're being moved. It almost feels like it's not you moving, it's that you're being moved. And I believe that is like the feminine essence. That's the feminine spirit descending into form.
Yeah. And then whenever it first starts moving through the tension, like what you were saying, that kind of comes up in the way of like stagnant emotions like grief or trauma and dense thoughts that have been stored in that part of your body. And then this feminine essence comes in and like literally physically shakes it out of you.
Yeah.
And this is why a lot of people are afraid almost of their sensuality, of their sexuality, because that brings you directly into your body and you're like
Mhm.
moving, and it shakes up all of this trauma, especially the trauma that we have in our hips. And that's why it can be such a transformative experience, I think, to heal your sensual relationship with yourself.
Totally.
I love
Yeah.
that.
The hips and like the throat and the jaw are all connected. So it's like if you
Mm,
have like trauma stored in your hips that you're not really able to get out, then you can get like a lot of tightness in the jaw and have trouble expressing yourself verbally. I think that's something I have issue with is like my voice will get all cracky and like I'm just not I'm not to a point yet where I'm like comfortable expressing totally verbally. And I can feel the connection between like my throat and my jaw and my hips. It's like I need to be more fluid in that. So
yeah, I never knew about that connection with the jaw and the hips. That's fascinating.
like a lot of people get like TMJ, like jaw clenching, and that's like
Mm,
hip related. I've had that.
wow. I never knew the two were connected.
Yeah. It's crazy. Everything is connected. That's like we look out in the world and it's like we can see the connections of everything in the world, but when you turn and like flip the telescope around, it's like the same thing is going on in the body where like everything in the body is also connected. So, because they're just a
Mm,
fractal of like the larger part.
that's so true.
Yeah. And that's
Wow.
why, like, like these teachings I think are so beautiful, but it's like that I don't think that that level of consciousness was available at the time because it's so new. You know, we don't even know like where we're headed in terms of evolution yet, which is so exciting.
Hmm. Yes, we're like stepping into something that has never been experienced before, which is incredible.
It's so cool. I'm so excited
Yeah,
about it.
me too. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Literally, I have no idea.
Yeah. We never know.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I love that. You know, I love that you brought that up too, because I've never thought about that in relation to this book. And I think that that just really helps me bring it all into a deeper perspective because it was channeled, but by a woman with filters, and the planet itself was at a certain level of consciousness when she wrote it. So I love that you brought that up. Okay. What paragraph are we on? I think.
I think you just did the third one.
And then you would read all material means
Yeah.
that one. Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
All material means that you accept as remedies for bodily ills are restatements of magic principles. This is the first step in believing that the body makes its own illness. It is a second misstep to attempt to heal it through non creative agents. It does not follow, however, that the use of such agents for corrective purposes is evil. Sometimes the illness has a sufficiently strong hold over the mind to render a person temporarily inaccessible to the atonement. In this case, it may be wise to utilize a compromise approach to the mind and body, in which something from the outside is temporarily given healing belief. This is because the last thing that can help the non right minded or the sick is an increase in fear. They are already in a fear weakened state. If they are prematurely exposed to a miracle, they may be precipitated into panic. This is likely to occur when upside down perception has induced the belief that miracles are frightening.
Mm,
I think that that really just goes back to like the it's it's like let's see. Sometimes an illness has a sufficiently strong hold over the mind to render a person temporarily inaccessible to the atonement. Um, it's almost like we sometimes need that in order to uh it's like the polarity that's needed. You know, if you're just going about life and everything's all good and whatever, um sometimes, I mean all the time, it's like any of us who are now on the spiritual path, it's like it only happened because something in our lives happened that really kind of like woke us up to it, whether it's like illness or an accident or a breakup or, losing someone. It's like all of these crisis things that happen in life. So it's like those like irritants are necessary for us to like become more lucid in the experience. Um, but it's not necessarily that we created those things. It's like those things were those things happened, but it is all for the purpose of evolution. It's not, I didn't create this terrible experience in my life because I'm bad and, whatever. It's like these things just happen, and it's like how you respond to it is how you evolve, essentially. It's like all, I believe it's all for the point of evolution.
I agree with that. We can almost get stuck in these like loops, which I had just mentioned before, of like thinking that there was something wrong with us when something happens and be like, oh, I can't believe I manifested something like this in my reality. There must be something wrong with me. Um, which is always just never the point of it. Um, yeah, I like that. Okay, I'll read this next paragraph and then we can do the lesson because we'll be at a perfect stopping point. The value of the atonement does not lie in the manner in which it is expressed. Value in the atonement does not lie. In fact, if it is used truly, it will inevitably be expressed in whatever way is most helpful to the receiver. This means that a miracle, to attain its full efficacy, must be expressed in a language that the recipient can understand without fear. This does not necessarily mean that this is the highest level of communication of which he is capable. It does mean, however, that it is the highest level of communication of which he is capable now. The whole aim of the miracle is to raise the level of communication, not to lower it by increasing fear. This just made me think of like truly learning how to bridge with people and how to communicate with people, especially people who trigger something in you or that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, and learning how to speak to them in a way that doesn't necessarily make them feel stupid or bad or wrong, or like you're telling them or like you're talking down to them, but like learning how to communicate from the heart truly means talking to people and communicating with them where they're at and not trying to like, I don't know, make them, like I said, make them feel stupid or bad or wrong. But um, yeah, so I think that this in a way is showing us how even when we talk to, if we talk to our spirit guides or the divine or somebody that we look to as a mentor, just to keep in mind that they're talking to us in a way that bridges and makes sense to us, but that doesn't mean it's the end all be all. There's always like a wider scope of reality that we are just not currently seeing in that moment. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us. That's just where we're at and we're being bridged with in order to expand.
Yeah, I love that. That makes a lot of sense too, because it's like it when it comes down to like sharing of information or whatever, it's like if you're not receiving the information from the right person for you, it's not going to sink in. Like I could it it's like I am able to receive what you put out because there's a part of you that is a mirror to me and I can see myself in you. But if I don't think I would be able to, if I came across just like any other person, it's like when you act as that bridge, you end up being like the exact thing that sinks in with the person that you're communicating with. So it's not so much like about what you say or, I mean, how you say it, but it's like it's the human connection between people. And, that like people can get stuck on like, teachers and mentors and like this person is better than this person or whatever, but it's like that person is only going to be able to reach you as far as is part of yourself, really. Like I couldn't just get the same from anyone. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
That makes sense. It's almost like if people are speaking from a place of authenticity, it resonates with the people it's meant to resonate with. But just because somebody doesn't resonate with it doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that they're resonating at a different
Yeah.
frequency or a different form of expression or kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like when like being that bridge, you know, I think that's why authenticity is so important because there's so much focus on authenticity for self, but authenticity for ourselves doesn't really matter as much as like we're here for each other. So I can be authentic to myself all day, but if I'm existing in isolation, then that doesn't matter. It's like my authenticity is only going to matter if I'm sharing that with other people. So
That's true. I like that.
that's all I had.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just thinking about it. I'm just like letting it all soak in because um this is just something that I contemplate a lot, just like learning how to be a bridge and not ever wanting to like um I don't know, express myself in a way that feels like I'm talking down to people because I think that's kind of that's how I received this anyways. But anyway, okay. I could just keep rambling, but you can go to the lesson and I will think about it later. Okay. I think we're on lesson 4.
Lesson 4. Okay.
Perfect. Oh, this is a long lesson. Hmm. Perfect. Lesson 4. These thoughts do not mean anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place. Um, Unlike the preceding ones, these exercises do not begin with the idea for the day. In these practice periods, wait, begin with noting the thoughts that are crossing your mind for about a minute. Then apply the idea to them. If you are already aware of unhappy thoughts, use them as subjects for the idea. Do not, however, select only the thoughts that you think are bad. You will find, if you train yourself to look at your thoughts, that they represent such a mixture that, in a sense, none of them can be called good or bad. This is why they do not mean anything. In selecting the subjects for the application of today's idea, the usual specificity is not required. Do not be afraid to use good thoughts as well as bad. None of them represent your real thoughts, which are being covered up by them. The good ones are but shadows of what lies beyond, and shadows make sight difficult. The bad ones are blocks to sight and make seeing impossible. You do not want either. This is a major exercise and will be repeated from time to time in somewhat different form. The aim here is to train you in the first steps towards the goal of separating the meaningless from the meaningful. It is a first attempt in the long-range purpose of learning to see the meaningless as outside of you and the meaningful within. It is also the beginning of training your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. In using your thoughts for application of the idea for today, identify each thought by the central figure or event it contains. For example, this thought about blank does not mean anything. It is like the things I see in this room. You can also use this idea for a particular thought that you recognize as harmful. This practice is useful, but is not a substitute for the more random exercises. Do not, however, examine your mind for more than a minute or so. You are too inexperienced as yet to avoid a tendency to become pointlessly preoccupied. Further, since these exercises are the first of their kind, you may find the suspicion of judgment in connection with thoughts particularly difficult. Do not repeat more than 3 or 4 times a day. We will return later. This just kind of makes me think of like a mindfulness practice,
Yeah.
just
I
becoming
just
aware of
don't
our
spend too
thoughts.
much time on it.
Yeah, I'm curious about that part. They're like, don't don't hurt yourself with this one.
I mean, I can definitely have a tendency to be lost in my mind all day. So,
Me too. It's so easy. And then at
yeah.
the end of the day, be like, well, whoops.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of how I interpret this is just being mindful of our thoughts and bringing to our awareness that they don't actually mean anything. They're just energy moving through us. Um, yeah,
Cool.
perfect.
I like that.
Me too. This one was fun. I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else unless you have anything.
Nope, I am good.
Awesome. Well, I will see you next Wednesday.
Sounds good. Okay, see you
Awesome.
then.
Bye.
Bye.